Saturday, October 16th, 2021, 7:45 a.m., Green Guesthouse, Mae Sot, Thailand. My idea to pick up my vaccine certificate on a later date and therefore leave for Kamphaeng, Phet on a later date is looking more and more like genius. My original plan was to leave this morning, to leave right now, in fact, but guess what is happening right now? Guess what has been happening for the entire night? Rain, of course. I was awake several times during the night, as usual, and each time I woke up to the sound of rain. It has been non-stop for the entire night, and it is still raining now. This is not the kind of day for enjoying a scooter ride through the Thai countryside. This is the type of day to be inside, drinking coffee, absorbed in technology, as I am once again. Yesterday, I finally finished editing the second video of my scooter trip to Tak City. I couldn't believe how long it took me to do that. Of course, it was partially or largely my own fault. I couldn't help myself, and I decided to make editing that video the subject of a series of KineMaster Learning Curve videos. I ended up making 3 one-hour tutorial videos about that process, and that absorbed much more of my time than I expected or planned. And even when the final edit of the video was complete, I was unable to export it because I didn't have enough available memory on my phone. I had to copy a bunch of old files from my phone to an external hard drive, and that took an astonishingly long time. The final export also took much longer than expected. One of my many technical puzzles is that the video export process pauses and stops every time the phone screen times out. So I can't just export the video and then leave the phone for 2 hours to finish the job. Every 10 minutes, the phone goes to sleep and locks, and that automatically stops the video export. So I have to monitor the phone for the entire 2 hours and constantly touch the screen to keep it awake. And I've looked and I've looked and I've looked, and I can't find any way to stop the phone from going to sleep. I can set the timeout period to a maximum of 10 minutes, and that's it. There is no always on setting. There is no never setting for the phone shutdown to occur. I assume I'm being a dummy and I'm missing something obvious. But right now, the video export ends up taking far longer than it should because it pauses every time the phone screen turns off. I can't just let the phone quietly work in the background while I do something else. It ended up taking most of yesterday evening just to do that, and then I had to upload the file to YouTube. I started that process when I went to sleep, and when I woke up this morning, it still wasn't done. It just finished a few minutes ago, and now I have to create the thumbnail and write the description and the tags and do all those other things. Editing, exporting, and uploading a YouTube video is a long process. I still have several videos from my Tak City trip that I haven't even begun to edit. I shot a video of a walk to the pedestrian bridge. I also shot a kind of talking video over breakfast the next morning at the hotel's restaurant. I tried to shoot a vlog in the Tak City night market that night, but that was a disaster and I gave up on it. Then I shot a video about my ride from Tak City back to Mae Sot. That might have to be divided into 2 videos. One breakfast setup video and one actual journey video. We'll see. So I still have at least 3 videos to complete from that trip that actually ended long ago. Apparently, I still have not mastered an efficient video editing system. I'd love to zoom through all 3 videos and finish them all today, but I know that isn't going to happen. I'd also like to edit a couple of learning curve videos for the Pocket too. I have the raw video for the buttons video and now the gimbal mode video, though I might redo the gimbal video just by reading the script above. I like how I organized my thoughts when I wrote them down. It sounds better to me than what I ended up saying on camera yesterday. I had another kind of funny video experience yesterday. My friend Brett Hall sent me a special gadget to be used with my Pocket 2 camera, and it came in the mail late yesterday afternoon. I was exhausted by that point in the day, but I wanted to open this package on camera and perhaps make an unboxing video about the exciting gadget it contained. I was pretty excited about this gadget, so I wanted to do it. So I set up a camera here inside my guest house room, and I went through a big build-up about how excited I was about the gadget in the envelope. And then, when I finally got around to opening the package, I realized, to my dismay, that the sellers had sent the wrong item. Some of it was right, but the item I was most excited about was a small Pocket 2 mount. But the Lazada senders sent a smartphone mount instead. That was so funny and so disappointing. I certainly lost my interest in editing that video. Without the star item being in the envelope, there wasn't much point. At some point yesterday, while I was waiting for my final video to be exported, I watched the latest episode of Foundation. This was episode 5. It was a bit disappointing, to be honest. The show had to back up and pick up where it left off with the story of the main character it had introduced right at the beginning. And they decided to do that by refreshing our memory and retelling her origin story. And they didn't really need to do that. I had all this information from the first episode already, and it had been told so well. Now they retold that story, but from a different perspective, and it felt unnecessary. It was still well done, but I didn't need it. It didn't push the story forward. It was just telling me things and showing me things I already knew and felt I had already seen. There was nothing about Empire, Brother Dawn, Brother Day, Brother Dusk, and the android Demerzel. Their story fascinates me the most, and they did not appear in this episode at all. Instead, the Empire was represented by a single ship that had been sent to investigate events on Terminus. And that disappointed me because the characters on that ship were presented as arrogant and entitled and careless and overconfident. I had developed a sense of quiet awe at the power of the Empire and its technology. And in this episode, it was represented by this rather ordinary crew and vulnerable ship. It brought them down from godlike to simply flawed human. But I still enjoyed the episode. It felt like a bridge episode. It was just getting us from the first part of the story to the next. But it still was enjoyable, and I'm sure to watch it again. I also watched the first episode of a new series called Chucky. I won't make any grandiose claims about this show. If anyone has seen the trailer, or if anyone has seen any of the movies, they know exactly what it is. But I actually found the trailer for the series quite fun. I love a good revenge story. And it appeared that our main character in the show was the typical passive victim of high school bullying and abusive relatives. And then Chucky comes into his life, and Chucky is only too willing to fight back on his behalf and carve up some bullies. I love that setup. You know that Chucky is evil and is the bad guy. In the movies, they approach the story as a pretty basic supernatural slasher. Chucky is evil and needs to be stopped or killed. But this TV show tosses in a twist with the idea that Chucky helps out this kid by fighting back against the bullies. So then you are left wondering how to feel about Chucky. Sure, you don't want an evil doll to kill a bunch of people, but you also cheer when the bullies get their comeuppance. And I honestly got a huge kick out of the first episode. It was a lot of fun. They leaned hard into the comedy and camp and into the horror. The acting was good. I love the characters. It's not taking itself too seriously. Production values are extremely high, I thought. The show looked great. I'll definitely be turning in to see later episodes. The first episode set a high bar for me, so we'll see if they can keep it up. Once again, I can feel that it is time to start my day. Time to set the events of yesterday aside and begin the events of today. It's still raining outside, so I feel pretty good about how things turned out with rescheduling my trip to Kamphaeng, Phet. I've been doing some more reading about the city, the historical park, and Thai history in general, so I'm getting excited. I got some gas yesterday at one point, so the scooter is fully gassed up and ready to go. I'll aim for Monday or Tuesday morning for my departure. And I think I'm going to be super casual about it and just ride to Tak and spend the night there. I could spend another day in Tak, or I could then just take a slow and leisurely ride to Kamphaeng, Phet. In an odd coincidence, Brett Hall just posted a video on his YouTube channel, Brett and Sam Thailand, chronicling his visit to the waterfalls in Kamphaeng, Phet province. I don't know if he mentioned it in his video, but I think he drove there in his car, and he did the trip in one day. He drove from Sam Niao to the waterfalls, and then drove all the way home again, covering something like 330 kilometers. I know that specifically because he included a relive map of his trip. There appear to be two competing low-budget guest houses in Kamphaeng, Phet. A place called P Resort gets mentioned a lot. It is listed on Google Maps as a 2-star informal hotel with free breakfast. They might as well have just called it Perfect for Doug Guest House. The other one is called 3J Guest House. It is also listed as 2-star, and Google Maps proclaims it to be a low-key budget hotel with bike rentals. Nothing wrong with that either. Considering my past life, a hotel having any star rating at all is something special. My usual accommodation from the past would not rise to the level of even a single star. However, I have noticed a trend lately that the extreme low-budget end of accommodation might not be the best value anymore. You have to consider what you get with your room. The Soho Boutique Hotel in Tak, for example, is more expensive than the low-budget Dome Thong Residence Hotel in Tak. The Dome Thong, in addition to its awesome name, costs only $8 US per night. The Soho Boutique might cost $25 per night, but at the Soho, you would get so much more, including an amazing breakfast at the Awake Owl Cafe. A meal like that can get me through an entire day without having to eat again. So sometimes mid-range is better value than low budget. Then again, I'm so out of touch that I still think of $8 a night as expensive. My brain is still stuck in the days of Ethiopia and Ecuador when my rooms cost $1 a night, and stuck in other places when the maximum I'd pay was about $5 a night. Anyway, the point is that there appear to be lots of great options in Kamphaeng, Phet for a place to stay. In addition to those low-budget offerings, there are many other, more expensive places. I had one last thought to record before I move on to start my day, and that is that I had this perhaps crazy idea to start yet another YouTube channel. And among other things, I would post this journal to that channel. The idea would be to keep a written journal like this, as I always do anyway, but rather than have all these thoughts and ideas go to waste, I could then sit down in front of a camera and read the journal aloud. I was thinking of calling this channel Planet Doug Behind the Scenes. I might go on a scooter trip to a place like Kamphaeng, Phet, and I might record the basic events of that trip on video, and I would post those videos to Planet Doug. But there is so much more going on during a trip like that. There is all the behind-the-scenes activity. I think of it a bit like how it used to be common for movies to have a making-of featurette to go along with the movie. I'd watch the movie and enjoy it, and then I'd watch the documentary feature of how they made the movie. Reading from my journal would give the behind-the-scenes perspective on that trip with much more detail. Long ago, I played around for a while with recording a type of journal on video in the morning. But that didn't work in the end. It takes too long to physically record a journal on video, and the end product isn't satisfying. I enjoy writing a journal more. But why not combine them? I could write a journal entry, as I always do, and then read it aloud on video later on. I like the idea. One last thought. While editing the Planet Doug video yesterday, I came across a section where I mentioned the song Take Me to the River by Talking Heads. And that, of course, sent me directly to YouTube, and I spent a solid 2 hours lost in enjoying videos of their live performances and listening to their songs. I have Talking Heads playing right now as I type this. For me, Talking Heads is one of those bands that makes me wonder why the world needs any more music. I've got Talking Heads and all the other bands from the 80s and 90s, so personally, I'm good. I don't even need more music in my life. It wouldn't matter to me if no new music was ever made. Sunday, October 17th, 2021, 5:30 a.m., Green Guesthouse, Mae Sot, Thailand. I mentioned my issues with exporting the last YouTube video, and I mentioned that I finally got it done. And then I went on to make a thumbnail and do the other work to finalize it. I was finally able to move on to some other project. However, in the afternoon, I suddenly realized that in all the confusion and effort, I had completely forgotten to include the final relive animated map in the video. That meant I had to re-edit the video, and then I had to re-export it and re-upload it. I inserted the relive movie without any problem. It just took a little bit of time. But then, for some reason, the video would no longer export. Well, that's not entirely accurate. It began the export process, and that export process continued for about an hour and a half, and then, when there was about 2 minutes left, it failed. I thought the problem was that I had let the battery of my smartphone get too weak, and it didn't have enough juice to finish the export. I thought that was my mistake. Therefore, I plugged in the phone, let it charge up for a while, and then I started the export process again. As before, it hummed along just fine for an hour and a half, but with 2 minutes left, it failed. I got a message each time saying that there had been an encoding error. It now seemed to me that the relive movie was the problem. The file had exported just fine without it, but now that I'd added it, the export encountered an encoding problem. I don't know why this would be. I didn't even insert the relive movie directly. I had edited it in the same video editing program where I added music, and then I exported it as a regular MP4 file. And I inserted that final MP4 file into the longer vlog video. It should have been fine. The only difference is that the free version of Relive does not produce a high-def video file. It is a 560p file, but I exported it at 1080p. Maybe that caused the problem. I'll have to run a couple of tests today to figure out where the problem is. When the dust settled on all this, I simply gave up. I wasn't able to re-export the video project, and I simply used the original video that I'd already uploaded, the one that didn't contain the Relive movie. I posted the Relive movie as a separate YouTube video. That was all I could do. And that was far from the end of my technology troubles for the day. I've become more determined than ever to incorporate this MacBook into my video production process, and I settled in to edit a couple of movies on iMovie. With the added horsepower of the Mac, I assumed video editing would be a breeze. However, even after all this time, and after watching a lot of tutorial videos and reading a lot of online guides, I still have no clue how iMovie works. I can't explain it, but iMovie, and this MacBook in general, uses a logic, a language, and a flow that I just can't wrap my brain around. The problem I ran into yesterday is that the MacBook ran out of hard drive space. I never quite know what the MacBook is up to be honest. And in this case, I got a message that said the hard drive was running out of space. And I had to decide whether to continue or cancel some kind of ongoing task or process going on in the background. But I had no clue what this task or process was. I hadn't told the Mac to do anything. I wasn't exporting a file or copying files or doing anything. So what was the Mac doing? I had no idea. So I took a risk and just canceled the task, whatever it might be. But the same message popped up over and over again. I eventually came to the conclusion that with the limited hard drive space, I could work on only one video at a time. I could load the raw files for one video and complete it, but that's it. I wouldn't be able to load the files for a second video. I'd have to wait for the first one to finish, delete all the files, and then start fresh with the second. But it turns out even that doesn't work. Even when I had a mere 50 or 60 gigabytes of files copied to the Mac, the hard drive still maxed out. And after a lot of research and work, I discovered why this was happening. It turns out that iMovie has to import and somehow transform and therefore make a copy of every file that you add to a video project. So even though the raw video files amounted to 50 gigabytes, by the time iMovie had finished importing them, those files took up 100 gigabytes. Plus, even when you are finished editing a video and you've exported it and you've deleted all the old files, the hard drive is still full. And that's because iMovie keeps a copy of all those video files in its system even after you've deleted them. I found a bunch of YouTube tutorial videos describing the very complicated process you have to follow in order to purge iMovie of all the original video files. And this involves using the settings to show the technical and deeply hidden files on your system. Then I have to dive down into the folder structure until I finally locate iMovie and then look for a folder called Package Contents for each particular video project. And inside this Package Contents folder, I can locate the system copy of those old files and remove them. Why is all this necessary? I have no idea. I'm accustomed to the world of Windows and PCs where you simply delete files and they're gone. The Apple philosophy seems to be to take much of the control of the computer away from the user. It does things by itself. But on this journey of locating files, I also had to come to grips with just how iMovie organizes files and projects and media libraries and some weird thing called iMovie events. And even after an entire day of research and work, I couldn't figure it out. It was so frustrating. The logic of the system completely eluded me. And I was far from alone in this. One thing I was trying to figure out was the differences between project media, libraries, all events, iMovie library, and events. iMovie appeared to spread all the files out among these categories, and I had no clue what was going on. And when I did my research, I found myself looking at endless YouTube videos about the difference between an event and a library and a project. No one really knows, as far as I can make out, what the heck is an event. I still don't know. Is it just a folder? Why can't iMovie just use the folders that I create when I copy my original video clips from memory cards? Again, I am accustomed to the world of PCs, where I simply control all of this myself. I create a folder and give that folder a name. Then I copy all of my video files into that folder, and when I start a new video project in my video editing software, I simply open that folder and choose the video files I want to add. That's it. No copies are made. There is no need for mysterious events. There are no media libraries. In short, there is no weird cascading system of automated file storage and categorization and duplication and even triplication. And even weirder things started to happen. I had made my peace with the idea that iMovie would always make a second copy of everything and keep it hidden from me. I started to see that I shouldn't copy video files from my memory cards to the hard drive. I should simply allow iMovie to import those video files directly from the memory card, and then I can remove the memory card from the system. And this might minimize the amount of memory required. However, for some strange reason, iMovie started to duplicate all of the video files that it had already imported. I had a full set of video files for my video project already. They were right there in some kind of media library window. They weren't in any folder as far as I could tell. I didn't know where they were, but they were in this window in iMovie, and I could access them and add them to my project and edit them. However, out of nowhere, I saw that iMovie was slowly making a third copy of every single video file. I have no idea why. I just saw them being made, and they kept popping up right beside the original copy that I'd imported. This went on for a long time, and this made my life even more complicated because iMovie doesn't even tell me the names of these video files. All I see is the thumbnail. I don't understand this at all. I looked everywhere to locate a setting where I could at least see the file names. What I really wanted to do was change the view from thumbnails to a simple folder directory list. I just wanted to see a list of all the files with their names, size, type, creation date, time, etc. But that doesn't appear to be possible in iMovie. It will show you these thumbnails, and that's it. And iMovie won't even auto-scroll. This has been driving me crazy. When you play your video as you are editing it, the timeline doesn't move with it. It just stays stuck exactly where it was. I can't figure this out at all. Why does it work this way? I can't see the advantage. It drives me crazy that the video preview I'm watching isn't represented in the editing timeline below. What's the point of that? I just don't get it. And there is no setting to change this. The short version of this story is that I'm done with iMovie. I've wasted enough of my life trying to figure it out. And frankly, I hate everything about it. How and why is it so popular? Who can possibly figure out how to use it? And why would anyone use it? Is everyone a kind of computer genius except for me? I still hope to use this MacBook for editing videos, but it won't be on iMovie. I spent some time yesterday looking for alternatives, and there are a bunch of them. DaVinci Resolve comes highly recommended, as does Hitman Films. I watched a detailed tutorial on DaVinci Resolve from Primal Video on YouTube, and I understood everything the guy said. It seemed logical and intuitive. I will probably try that program first. And I'm not sure that anything else happened yesterday. In fact, I just realized that with all this trouble, I never once left my room here at the guest house. I never went outside for the entire day. I started working at the crack of dawn when I woke up, and I kept working until I went to sleep at night. And I never really made any progress at all. I just went around in circles all day long. Today, I will be starting largely from zero with a brand new video editing app. I'm going to uninstall iMovie and try out an alternative. I'll probably try DaVinci Resolve first. I'm at the start of a new and exciting learning curve, but hopefully this learning curve will eventually lead somewhere productive, unlike iMovie. Monday, October 18th, 2021, 7 a.m., Green Guesthouse, Mae Sot, Thailand. Once again, not a whole lot happened yesterday except for listening to the rain and working on technology. The rain continues to astonish. A friend of mine sent me some photographs of the main highway between Mae Sot and Tak, and apparently a large part of that highway vanished in another landslide caused by the excessive rain this year. It's not clear how open that highway is now, and I have plans to take that highway to Tak either Tuesday or Wednesday morning, weather permitting. From the weather forecast, it looks like both are possibilities. For my life and things I need to do, I think Wednesday is a better choice. That will give me today and tomorrow to get my life sorted out and organized. If the main highway to Tak appears to be risky in terms of closures, I could always take the mountain road again. That would take much longer, of course, but it would be much more scenic. I left off my life story yesterday, tearing into iMovie, and this morning, my opinion hasn't changed in the slightest. I'm sure that given enough time and study, I could figure out how the darn thing works. After all, a lot of people in the world happily use it for video editing. But even if I became an iMovie master, I don't think I would be satisfied with it. I'm a simple man, and I need simple features, such as being able to see the file names of the files stored on my computer. And if iMovie can't do that, then it is bye-bye iMovie. And even if it turns out that it is capable of doing that, I would still dump iMovie for the simple reason that it has to duplicate all my files and there is no auto-scroll option for the timeline. I've done some research into that, and it appears that iMovie used to have auto-scroll, but in the latest update, they removed that ability. No one knows why. And even the iMovie experts don't seem to be happy about that. I was so annoyed with iMovie yesterday that I didn't just stop using it. I decided to do a slash and burn and remove it completely from my computer, along with any trace that it ever existed. That was also an interesting experience on my PC to Mac learning curve. On a PC and on Android, I would normally uninstall an application. It had been installed. Now it needs to be uninstalled. And that special command is what you look for on the menu and in the system. But there is no uninstall option on Macs and in iOS. Instead, you just move the application to the trash. And that's it. Apparently, moving it to the trash uninstalls it. That felt weird to me. What if all you wanted to do was delete an icon for that program? You could accidentally remove the whole program when all you wanted to do was delete an icon. But iOS kind of has you covered there, because in another annoying twist, this MacBook in iOS requires me to insert my passwords to do anything. Even to download and install a new app, I have to insert my Apple account password. It asks for my password for nearly every action I take. Perhaps I can change this in the settings, but this has been driving me a bit crazy. I don't understand the need, even as a default. I'm logged in to my own laptop. I'm logged into my Apple account. All I want to do is download an app from the Apple App Store or delete an app. Why should I have to insert my password again to do that? But I eventually managed to remove iMovie, and this was after deliberately tracking down and deleting every copy of every video file I could find that iMovie had created. I didn't want to spend the rest of my life enduring 50 gigabytes of my limited SSD drive space being taken up by hidden iMovie files. I don't know if I found them all, but I did my best. And the storage on my 256 gigabyte SSD appears to make sense now. Enough free space appears to be available. And then I downloaded and installed DaVinci Resolve 17, and I began the first few tentative steps on learning how to use that program. Right out of the gate, I was much happier than I was with iMovie. It's too early for me to say that DaVinci Resolve is a fantastic program and perfect for me. It might turn out not to be suitable, but I can say that it felt intuitive and normal right away. I watched a long and detailed tutorial video for beginners, and everything the guy said made sense to me, and I understood it all right away. The features I expected to be present were present, and everything worked largely as I expected it to. DaVinci Resolve didn't have to create its own copies of all my files. It just used the original files that I copied from the memory cards. It also worked with all the folders that I had created for my video files. I was able to view the file names of those files. In fact, the program offered 4 different view options. I could select thumbnail view with file names. I could select list view with file names, file duration, frame count, file type, resolution, FPS, file path, video codec, audio codec, date modified, date added, and other information. I could select a simplified metadata view with large thumbnails. And I could sort the files in each of these views by multiple parameters in an ascending or descending direction. That all seemed logical to me, and it was exactly what I wanted. Contrast that with my experience in iMovie, where I could not figure out how to get the app to just show me the file names. From there, everything I did in DaVinci Resolve just made sense and felt intuitive. When I created a new project, DaVinci asked me to name the project. iMovie didn't allow this. It called every new project My Movie, and then you had to change it later. The first step in DaVinci Resolve was to select all the technical parameters for the video project, and this could be saved as a convenient preset to which I could assign a name. None of that was possible in iMovie that I was aware of. And DaVinci Resolve had a convenient set of icons arrayed along the bottom of the screen, each representing a completely separate workspace. While working on a video project, you simply moved from left to right and switched from workspace to workspace until you got to the end and exported your final video. The first is your media space, where you simply select all the files to add to the project. The second is called Cut, and this workspace is designed as a place where you can quickly and efficiently do a rough cut on individual video clips. The third is called Edit, and this is your main editing workspace. Next to that is Fusion. This is a highly technical and powerful space where you can create motion graphics and visual effects. The next one over is called Color, and you do your color grading here. The penultimate workspace is called Fairlight, and this contains a suite of highly advanced audio post-production tools. And finally, you reach the Deliver workspace, where you select all your parameters for the final export of the video. It's unlikely that I would ever have a need for the vast majority of the tools and features in DaVinci Resolve. I feel sure that I would never need to even use the Fusion and Fairlight workspaces. But the way DaVinci Resolve is organized makes that okay. All those powerful and professional tools are kept separate and in entirely different areas. I can just skip past them and never think about them. 90% of my time would be spent in the simple edit workspace anyway. I only need to concern myself with the media, edit, and deliver workspaces to produce one of my simple videos. It's possible that there are other programs out there that are more suited to my needs. DaVinci Resolve is clearly designed for professionals, but it seems to run just fine on this MacBook. It is logically laid out and has all the basic features I need, and I can simply ignore the pro areas that I don't need. Yet they are there if I ever want to play around with them. I'm going to give DaVinci Resolve a try and see how it goes. In my short time using it yesterday, I noticed that I was having no trouble at all with cursor control and video playback. I was just doing what I needed to do instinctively. In iMovie, I was constantly making mistakes. I couldn't figure out how to scroll through the video the way I wanted to, or move my cursor, or insert my cursor, or control when and if the video would start to play, or where my edits would be inserted. There was something about the logic that eluded me. I guess it just wasn't what I was accustomed to. I think it was backwards to my expectations, and that's why I kept doing the wrong thing. But the system and logic of DaVinci Resolve appears to match my experience with my previous video editing programs. It is by far, and by orders of magnitude, the most complex and professional program I've ever had to deal with, yet it feels simple and manageable. iMovie is supposed to be simple and easy to use for beginners, but I was baffled by it. There's a mystery of design philosophy there to be solved, but I'm not going to dive into it. I don't have the time or the energy. I'm just going to pretend that this little iMovie interlude in my life never happened. What I just wrote about occupied much of my day. With the rest of it, I edited and exported a video for YouTube. It was a video that I shot while visiting the somewhat famous pedestrian bridge in Tak City. This small adventure occurred in the evening on the same day that I rode my scooter from Sam Niao to Tak City and then moved into my wonderful room at the Soho Boutique Hotel. At about 5 in the afternoon, I grabbed my Pocket 2 camera and I went for a walk to the Ping River and the bridge. It was only 4 or 5 blocks from my hotel at most. I joined all the local people walking across the bridge and enjoying the sunset and the cool breeze off the river. And I took the opportunity to keep testing the Pocket 2 and become more familiar with it. I focused in particular on the 3 gimbal modes. I think I now have those gimbal modes figured out. I am having some issues with the Pocket 2. These are unexpected issues. For example, the Rode Wireless Go doesn't seem to play nice with the Pocket 2. I learned that the Pocket 2 will not connect with the Rode if the Rode is already plugged in. The only way to get the Pocket 2 to recognize the Rode is to plug it in after the Pocket 2 is turned on. This is a problem because it means that I have to unplug and plug back in the Rode every time I turn the Pocket 2 off and back on. That is a big enough hassle that it is essentially a deal breaker. It means that I can't use the Rode with the Pocket 2. It's the same, in fact, with any wired microphone that you plug into the Pocket 2. If it is already plugged into the Pocket 2 when you turn the camera on, the camera won't recognize the microphone. It will default to using the 4 built-in mics. To switch to the external microphone, you have to unplug the mic and then plug it back in. This is a problem because it takes time and is a hassle, but it is also something you will often forget to do. You will end up recording with the built-in mics by accident when you intended to use an external mic. It's inevitable. Luckily, this problem does not exist with DJI's own wireless mic. It does not require plugging in an extra receiver or a cord, Therefore, the Pocket 2 recognizes the DJI wireless mic whether the camera is on or off. If it is already on, the Pocket 2 will see the microphone and connect to it. Plus, of course, if the Pocket 2 is already powered on, when you turn on the DJI wireless mic, it will also connect to it. Therefore, it is much faster and safer to use the DJI mic. I tested this, and it works the same way when you have a lavalier mic plugged into the DJI mic. This means that the DJI mic will be my default microphone for the Pocket 2. I plan to use the Rode with both the Pocket 2 and the GoPro 9 just so that I could keep the audio quality roughly the same, but it turns out that I have no realistic choice but to use the DJI wireless mic. I don't actually like the sound of the DJI wireless mic, but combined with a lavalier mic, it is great. I guess that will be my normal setup. And in a way, that brings an advantage because I will no longer need a cold shoe mount for my Rode Wireless Go receiver. That will open up mounting options, including using a tiny Anduer tripod ball head that I discovered online the other day. I will be placing an order on Lazada for one of those as soon as I can. 1:15 p.m. I'm back from a short errand run. I had an interesting, if unproductive, experience out there in the big city. My main goal was to withdraw some cash for my upcoming trip to Kamphaeng, Phet. I was successful in that. The ATMs of Mesot showed me some love today. But with some of that cash, I hope to buy at least one new memory card. I went to all the stores I could think of in Mesot, but none of them had a single memory card larger than 128 gigabytes. I'll eventually be able to get the 512 gigabyte or 1 terabyte card I want, but I will have to order it online and have it delivered. While riding out of the Tesco parking lot, I came across a man sitting on the curb and asking for money. Luckily, I spotted him long before I got to that part of the exit, so I was able to stop and get out some money to give to him. I'm odd that way in that I'm perfectly happy to give money to someone asking for it, but I dislike standing beside that person and then getting out my wallet and rifling through it to select the appropriate amount to give. That always feels weird and awkward to me. I prefer to prepare in advance, and seeing this man from a distance gave me that time to prepare. When I rode up beside him, I could see that he was missing one leg. He had a plastic prosthesis, but I couldn't make out much in terms of its design or construction. He was quite appreciative of the money I gave him. One could say that he was overly appreciative because he wouldn't take it for a long time. He clasped his hands together in the classic Thai gesture of thanks, and then he just held them there while I was holding out the money. Meanwhile, cars and trucks were lined up behind me and waiting for me to ride on. It was an amusing moment, a somewhat typically awkward moment for me. These things tend to happen in my life. I was trying to do a nice thing by giving this man in need some money, but I ended up annoying a whole row of vehicles as they waited impatiently for me to keep moving. The other small adventure involved massage chairs. The massage chairs at Tesco have been inoperational for most of this pandemic period. They have been unplugged, shut down, and have big red X's on them. But I noticed that they were open for business again, and on impulse I pulled out a 10 baht coin to try one out. I have to say that I was deeply disappointed. The chair didn't work in the way that I expected, and it was actually quite uncomfortable. It wasn't relaxing at all. But at Robinson's shopping plaza, I found other massage chairs. These looked to be much better, and they were so fancy that they wouldn't even take coins. The minimum amount you could insert was a 20 baht note. I decided to take a chance, and I sat down and put in my 20 baht, and it was wonderful. This chair was branded with the name Crowtron, and it did all the things I hoped it would. For one thing, it reclined. When you first sit down, you are sitting upright, but once it activates, the chair reclines and you recline with it. And this allowed me to truly relax into the massage. The massage itself was not amazing. It is just a set of mechanical rollers in a chair after all, but it was pretty good. It went on for a deliciously long time and had a variety of movements built into its programming. Best of all, the lower parts wrap tightly around your calves and really grip them and provide a nice workout. I really like that super tight sensation of pressure. The chair at Tesco didn't do that at all. I thought it was well worth the 20 baht. I wasn't surprised that when it was over, the chair played some music and a recorded announcement. I assume it was intended to wake up any customers that were soothed into sleep during the massage. I think even I could have fallen asleep. I returned to my guest house with no 512 gigabyte or 1 terabyte memory cards, but I have some cash and feel quite relaxed after my chair massage.